In this video, we are going to explain to you about lesson plan. But before that, let me introduce the member. The first, I am Elisa Dian Puspasari and my friend
Intan Tia Jangariani.
Let's check it out. These are the topics that we are going to explain to you in this video. The first, what is lesson?
What is a good lesson?
Why plan a lesson?
What is involved in the lesson planning process?
And the last, we are going to conclude our presentation. Now, what is a lesson? Rivers in 1981 defines lesson plan as a progression of interrelated activities which reinforce and consolidate each other in establishing the learning towards which the teacher is directing his or her effort. This chapter aims to develop a more critical awareness of the lesson planning process.
Next, what is a good lesson? A good lesson is adaptable and flexible, is a backup system, has clear objectives, has a variety of activities, skills, interaction, and materials, caters for individual learning style, has interesting and enjoyable content, has an appropriate level of challenge, and last is well prepared, well planned, and well timed.
Next, why plan a lesson? By planning the lesson, children learn more easily when they know what to expect in a lesson and what the teacher expects of them. It makes them more secure and more confident. It also enables them to predict situations and the language and behavior were likely to be used in them. After a few lessons, children get to know the routines and feel comfortable. If the teacher stages the lesson carefully and gives explicit signal to the children so they know when they move on to the next stage, they will often make preparation themselves and therefore become more responsible for their own learning. The security of knowing what to expect next enables children to concentrate on the activity.
Well-planned lesson makes a teacher feel more confident and professional. It follows that the same teacher will go through a similar process of reflection after a lesson, asking themselves what worked well, what worked less well, what they would do differently another time. This process helps teachers monitor their teaching and identify their strong and weak points as well as evaluate their pupils' learning and form the basis for future planning. It is therefore an important aspect of evaluation and self-development. Finally, lesson planning provides accountability by providing a record of work which can be shown to school authorities, inspectors, and parents, or used by another teacher who may have to substitute for the class.
The next is what is involved in the lesson planning process. First, syllabus. Basically, a syllabus provides a list of language items that are to be taught, how they are to be taught, in which order, and how long it should take to teach them. The syllabus is provided through the contents pages, the courses map, a scope and sequence chart. Study this carefully to find out how the course is structured. Courses will express their aims in different ways depending on how they are organized. The second is learners' need. The need of the children and how they learn must be considered first so that teachers achieve a balance between the language aims of the syllabus and the need of the children, which involves their all-around general education. The next is content areas, materials, and methodology. If you are using a course, this will define the content areas, provide the materials, as well as suggest the way things should be taught. Methodological preparation can help pupils understand the reason for your choice of a certain methodology. but you may also decide to modify this slightly by adapting and supplementing your materials to keep more in line with their expectation.
Next is the structure of a lesson. The typical structure of most lessons consists of three main stages: a beginning, a middle, and an end. Depending on the length of the lesson, the middle may consist of one, two, or more activity cycles. Whatever the length, pupils need clear signposting so they understand how a lesson progresses from one stage to the next and from one activity cycle to the next, gradually working to the stated goal. Next is the selection and sequencing of activities. The selection and sequencing of activities throughout a lesson needs careful consideration. When selecting an activity, we need to know more than what language learning it will encourage. We must also be aware of what general behavior it is likely to encourage. This will help us judge if the activity or sequence of activities is a good choice for a particular lesson or group of pupils. We also need to consider the involvement factor when selecting and sequencing activities. When selecting and sequencing activities, we also need to think in terms of variety. Although varied activities put together in no particular order can result in confusion on behalf of the pupil.
Next is type of activity. The types of activity are such as problem solving, listening to a story, singing a song, a guessing game, a word puzzle, a role play, a picture dictation, a cycle response activity, and etc. Next is type of interaction. The types of interaction are such as teacher with whole class, teacher with individual pupil, pupil with pupil, whole class working in a pairs or groups. The next is language skill. Although much of the work that takes place in a young learner's class in the initial stages is based on listening and speaking, we also need to introduce reading and writing and vocabulary work to offer variety and gradual exposure to the written word. Next, tempo or pace. Some activity may be fast-moving such as a team game and others slower and quieter such as coloring or copying words.
Next is difficulty. Some activities are more fun and lighter while others are more demanding and require greater effort and concentration. Next, level of pupil responsibility. Some activities require pupils to work independently of the teacher and use their own initiative, while others require pupils to do as the teacher says. Next is classroom arrangement. It is possible to vary the setting arrangement of your classroom from time to time to facilitate certain types of activities. Tables arranged in groups if you are doing group work. A horseshoe allows a space in the middle for physical activities. Leaving a space at the front of the class is useful for storytelling session where children sit around the teacher to listen, and etc.
The next is materials. If possible, vary this so pupils are exposed to a variety of input. Supplement your core materials with stories, videos, games for authentic sources if possible. Some guidelines to consider. First, begin and end the lesson so that children perceive their English lesson as an event which has a specific structure, a beginning, middle, and an end. Depending on how long your lesson is, consider putting harder activities earlier as pupils will probably be fresher and more energetic. Third, Decide at which point it is best for your class to be lively. It is sometimes difficult to calm a class down once they have been involved in a lively, fun activity. It is important that pupils are quiet at the beginning and end of a lesson so they are attentive when you inform them of the lesson's aims and also during the review session at the end. The fourth is think carefully about transition from one stage or activity cycles to the next. The last, and on a positive note, make sure pupils leave your class with a sense of achievement and self-esteem. Sum up and prize what the children have done well. Build in a short routine fun activity for leaving the class which can be linked in some way to the content of your lesson.
Another guidelines to consider is good time management skills. Good time management skills facilitate the smooth running of a lesson. Knowing about the linguistic and cognitive demands that certain lessons make on your pupils will help you judge how long an activity is likely to take. The key to effective lesson timing is good planning and flexibility.
The next is how can I write a lesson plan? There is no correct way to write a lesson plan, but it should give a clear picture of what you intend to do and how you intend to achieve them. To start off, you may find it helpful to use lesson planning or record sheet. The linguistic aims are listed starting with grammatical structures, language function, vocabulary, pronunciation, and skills. The ordering of these aims can vary according to the factor of your language materials. For example, you can see the lesson plan in the page 238.
Next slide is about the different stages on the plan. There are 3 stages in planning the lesson. The first is plan, beginning the lesson. In this stage, there are 3 activities that usually do by the teacher. The first activity is warm up. This could take the form of an informal chat, ritual activities like taking the register, writing the date on the blackboard, talking about the weather, and etc. The second activity is reviewing of work covered in the previous lesson. This is to consolidate language learned in the previous lesson and may provide a base for input of new language. The third activity is informing pupils of the lesson aims. Think about the language you would use to explain the aims of the lesson. The second stage is do activity cycle. An activity cycle involves children in a learning task which incorporates the plan to review sequence. A lesson will include one or more activity cycles that have some kind of connection and purpose between them. Children must be able to see how activities contribute toward the goals stated at the beginning of the lesson. The last stage is review, ending the lesson. Give a rounding up, overall review, and summary of the lesson, a confirmation of the aims of the lesson, and review of pupils' performance. Give pupils any homework explaining what they must do and when you want it.
Next is how can I evaluate a lesson? To help in evaluating your lesson, you may likely to tape or video record your lessons. Ask your pupils to comment on your lesson or, if possible, invite a colleague to sit in on a lesson and observe.
From all this explanation, we can conclude that a lesson plan can only indicate what you intend to do in a lesson. What you actually do and what actually happens may differ from a number of reasons. The key factor is to be flexible and adapt your plan, and the last is you need to reflect and evaluate your lesson.
Thank you.